spiritual being having a human experience. And my name is Narayani Gaia. My intention for doing this podcast is to bring on guests like our guest today and to share experience grounded wisdom that helps us cultivate our energy and be on the path of service and meaning and healing. And so I invited Sever. How do I say it?
It's Shera Sever.
Sever.
Yeah, it's a Slovenian name.
Thank you. I invited Shera. We've been social media friends for many years, and we run in a lot of the same circles of real life circles of people in the Bay Area. And I wanted to bring Shara on because there were a whole bunch of really juicy topics that I thought would really be valuable to add to both the collective conversations around awakening that are happening now, but also to add to the all the conversations we've had on Awaken Life Radio. And this one is a really, really juicy one that we haven't dove into, dove in, dived, dove into quite yet. And it has to do with the wounded healer. So, just quick introduction about Shara. Shara has spent decades helping individuals and leaders navigate life transitions, trauma healing, and purpose driven work. She brings together spiritual wisdom, somatic awareness, leadership development, and cross cultural teachings to support people through profound personal and professional change. Sounds a lot like me. Um, and talking about alchemizing wounds into wisdom, I want to recognize you, Sherry, because you were really, really specific about wanting to make sure that we had the right title so that we were not hooking into any marketing language that took us away from the light and the positive energy that we want to share. And so thank you for that thank you for those refinement conversations that we had over the last few months to actually get to this point where we are in this moment. So welcome.
We are here, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to the next hour.
Yay. Great. So I'm going to just dive right in and start with a question for you, my friend. Um, and if you guys are listening now or in the future now, you can absolutely comment and we will respond. If you're listening in live time or again in the future, please share where you are listening from. I'd love to hear where people are. Um, okay, so good. We should be streaming. Are we streaming? Okay,
Yeah.
we should be streaming. I'm looking on YouTube for a second, and it's kind of missing, but um, okay. So question for you while I dig around in here is why the wounded healer? What
Why?
is
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
why is it that you wanted to talk about the wounded healer?
Yeah, great question. I remember when we first
Mhm,
started our exploration. It
mhm,
was like, what's alive for me right now, topic wise, and I think we um, collaboratively decided this archetype. Let's talk about this archetype and let's
mhm.
clarify number one what the wounded healer is.
Go ahead.
And so I'd like to start with that
Mhm,
because we hear a lot about pain and people's path, past, and people's paths. And I think an old paradigm
Maybe.
and
If somebody comes
uh,
and tries to steal you, what do you say?
I'm so sorry. I'm double checking on the back end that everything's okay. Keep going. I apologize.
yeah, so the
Please.
archetype, the old
Mhm,
paradigm and the lower awareness or lower consciousness way of
mhm,
looking at one's wounds or path. We used to use, or still it's used oftentimes, he is broken, or they're broken, or she's broken, or they come from broken homes, or, other side of the tracks, or just broken, this word of broken. So, when
mm,
I embody and teach the archetype of the wounded healer. Number one, It's an archetype that's found across psychology, mythology, spirituality, and many cross-cultural ancient healing traditions, and it really describes how we, as shamans, mystics, healers, teachers, advisors, leaders, all of that, counselors, how we take our own challenges, suffering, trauma, and become and allow that to be the medicine for wisdom, for compassion, for empathy, and for service.
Hmm. Yeah. So what I hear you saying is the wounded healer is basically your wound is actually your medicine.
Yeah, it's a path, and it's
It's
not
a
just one specific wound. It's
it's a
you know,
path. It
yes,
becomes your path. Yeah. How comfortable? I don't know how comfortable you are talking about your own personal path, but I'd be really curious
yeah,
why this particular topic is of interest to you.
yeah. I thought about that. It's like, well, how much do I want to share actually about my own personal path? And I thought about, gee, how am I gonna frame that? And I'll start with, um, which is where not everybody that has wounds, if you will, or challenges or traumas in their life, particularly their early life, where needs weren't met, basic
Hmm.
needs weren't met, and instead
Hmm.
one has experienced, without blaming anybody or any institution or any paradigm. It's just um, what resulted was negligence, abandonment, abuse in various forms. Not
Hmm.
everybody that experiences that um, in their path, and particularly early childhood and developmental years, is a wounded healer. It's a choice that one makes, and it's a
Hmm.
purpose. It's a life purpose. And I started my journey. I think my awakening, or the beginnings of my awakening, took place when I was studying in the 19th century, 18th century, right, the Romanticists. And
Hmm.
this is when spirituality started to emerge in English literature and in poetry. And that's where I had this deep connection, because it was an exploration of the soul
Hmm.
in these writings. And so that opened things for me. I then very quickly got involved in, the Eastern practices and philosophies, yoga, all different kinds
Hmm.
of yoga, Tai Chi, uh, what is now breath work. Yeah, it's just part of a yogic practice.
We talked
But
about that.
lots,
We talked about that last week. We did a whole episode on breath work. Yeah.
yeah, and
If people
and
want to check that out, yeah, we go deep into that. Hmm.
exactly, because there's so many
Hmm.
different kinds now. Mine was,
Yeah.
I mean, my introduction was pranayama.
Yeah. Me
So
too.
it was through the body actually that my healing began, and
Hmm.
I think we can take it from there. But I got into dance and physical theater and all kinds of voice work in my 20s, and the journey 4 decades later, it just hasn't stopped. But
Hmm.
I feel very integrated in the work I've done, and there's
Hmm.
many more touchstones
Hmm.
on the journey that I'm excited to share if that's the direction we go.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I can absolutely relate with the body piece. You know, my guru is Swami Satchidananda, and there's this really wonderful astrologer that I love. His name is Henry Hertzberger, and he used to hang out with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and he's a yagya. So he does yagyas. He's a vadya who does yagyas. So for those of you guys listening, a vadya is a it's like I don't know if he's a Vadya. I think he's not a Ayurvedic doctor, but he's a Jyotish. That's what he is. He's a Jyotish. So he's a Vedic astrologer, and he does like fire ceremonies for you, and he
Mm,
telepaths with the star, with like the and the deities of the different planets when you get sessions, and he does all by donation. He's very, very beautiful and very blessed
mm,
to know him. But many years ago, I was getting a reading from Henry, and he said, I met Swami Satchidananda. He said, and when he walked in, there was a difference between him and a lot of the other gurus in like this is the 70s. I'm pretty sure it was the 70s, not the 60s, because Swami Satchidananda came to Woodstock in 69. So this must have been the 70s or so, 70s, maybe 80s. And they were at some big expo or something, and he said he was really in his body, and again, he's a hatha yogi, and hatha yogi is practice what everyone now knows as yoga, right? Yoga asana. But that aspect really resonated with my chart because I'm also like you into embodiment and really drawn to embodiment. He goes, oh well, that makes sense that was your teacher because he's all about service and grounding and the body. Whereas some of those teachers were not about the body. Satchida, I am, true knowledge bliss. I'm not this body, right? So it's interesting that right now people are like embodiment. I mean, a new generation of kids they're really getting it. They're really getting like, oh, the women's path is the embodiment path. We've been in balance. We haven't had feminine balance in our world. So now we're returning to feminine balance through embodiment. Like people are like that alone. That's for me. I could say like that's been my path as well for 30 years, consciously. But I'm curious about this thing that you said in the beginning where you mentioned the actual wounds. I know for me, I can give some examples of how that has shown up in my life, the wounds. So when I was in my early 20s, I used to massage people all the time. I would just go up and I would massage her shoulders, or my grandma would massage her feet, and I was like really into massaging people. And and eventually, after praying about like my career move, it was obvious to go to massage school. And after I started, massage school after a couple of years, I realized that I really was very, very touch deprived. And I really didn't get
mm,
touch when I was growing up.
mm,
I just don't remember really being touched, except when I started being sexually active, which was,
mm.
a lot more touch. Um, and also, that when I started doing money workshops, the prosperity workshop thing, that my first memory of money was my mom offering me a penny a minute to tickle her arm. And so when I look back on doing massage, it wasn't like, oh, that's my gift and everything else is just like, issues, but this is where I shine. So I just do what I shine. There's actually a lot of layers of my own patterning, wounding, and needs projected into my work. And I always feel now that we do what we need, and we can't absorb or take in, like when we can't take advice or we can't get help, or that we are, or we even criticize others, that it's always our own story. Not saying you have to analyze every day all day, but when it's time to do the work, that it's a projection of our own needs and our own trying to get our own needs met in different ways. So I'm curious when it comes to the wounded healer and your own path of, because you shared about the gifts and you shared about things that were interesting that you studied and that made up who you are, but I didn't hear about, and if you don't want to talk about yourself, that's okay. I respect that. But perhaps there's some clients or other people that you feel more comfortable talking about around how their wounds shaped their path more specifically. I just gave a couple of examples
Whew,
for me.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah, from
Yeah. Whatever you want to
guru.
share. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like to kind of riff with a lot of what you just shared, starting
Mm-hmm.
with guru and yoga and
Yeah.
um, the body as portal is where I left off last time, and I just want to emphasize that again, that in our healing
Mm-hmm.
and in the path of the wounded healer, whether working with self or others, using the body as the portal. It's the doorway into transformation. It's the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of body work that we just discussed, including yoga and esoteric yoga, even mindfulness meditation can be a portal into the body if you start to learn the body scans and you're
Oh
actually
yeah.
burning away energy blocks. And I've had that experience. Um, want to address something
Exactly.
about projection, and then I'll talk about clients.
Sure.
One of the things that when we're on the path of the wounded healer, and when that we've declared that path, and it's definitely our purpose, um, is that we want this is an awareness that we want to be careful about our projections, because it's not uh, we don't want to be using our wounds and with clients and the projection to do our own healing. We need to already have done the
Ideally.
work and walk the
Ideally.
talk. Yeah.
It happens
And
in the beginning of your path, though. I mean, it does.
yeah.
It
Um,
happens. I just want to name that. Like, I get it, but I also to
yeah.
say that like you never did that or I never did that wouldn't be true. So,
Yeah. I didn't say I never did that.
right,
I have
exactly. That's
learned.
why I'm saying it.
Yeah. The 4 decades, I mean, when I started this journey, what I've learned and what is most important and what I've had the experience of, particularly in the last 9 years, is how
Mhm.
important integration,
Mhm.
self-compassion is.
Yeah, exactly.
So with respect to clients, to ask the question again so I can,
That's okay. No.
decide to pick
No
which
problem.
stories you'd like me to
No problem.
share
We could just let it
about.
flow. I mean, I want to respond to what you just said too, in that because I want to hash that out for our listeners because I think you and I understood it. We had like a whole telepathic couple of like paragraph underneath what we just said that we didn't say. So I want to explain that to people who might not know and make sure that I'm hearing you correctly and it's not just in my head because that could happen. So what I heard you say was actually, I'm going to paraphrase. Like, we don't want to think about working with clients as a place to work out our stuff. We don't like, I don't want to help somebody, like with something that as a healer that I'm still, wounded in. And I remember my first coach who you probably know, Sage Levine, she would say, she said, as you guys come into coaching or speaking and your own body of work, you want to be like, don't be further than knee deep in your stuff. Like
Oh,
if
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, like don't like if it's anywhere above the knee that you have an emotional charge and you're trying to teach somebody, that's too much. Um, but what you're saying is, like work it out first and then don't try to do that for others. And I the reason that I say that I've done it is because I have, and it's not like it was an intention to do that, but it's upon reflection, like massage. It's like I didn't know when I went to massage, it's like, oh, I'm the one who needs touch. But there were many, many, many other gifts and medicines that awoke as a result of being a massage therapist for 20 years and teaching and Ayurveda and all the other things that I had done that integrated it. But often it's looking back when you're like, oh, I was doing that, or in the moment, or you see that your client's going through the same thing that you're going through, and that could happen. But there's a difference between that and going, I'm integrated. This is what I hear you saying. And I've integrated, I've done the integration work, and I really am not carrying that as a wound. I'm on the other side. And so now I can support you in that transition to that place as a
Yeah,
coach or a healing.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What I've also do with clients or anybody I'm working with is
Mm,
I'll ask because it's always about them. It's not about me in my sessions or in my
of
group work.
course.
But I'll ask, would they like to hear my story? Would they like to hear how I approached that,
Of
or how
course.
somebody else has? But I have found when they hear it directly from me, and I expose my vulnerability, that really creates more trust and more of a bond
Exactly.
in a client practitioner relationship. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
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 absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's part of the gift of not being a licensed therapist. It's like you just like I don't know about you. You have a psychology degree, right? Do you have a master's or did you do that?
I have a master's in cog psych, and it's cognitive
Right.
psychology. It was
Yeah.
designed more in the organizational culture, so with leaders.
Okay.
But I've done a lot of work, coaching certifications, and particularly in the trauma field. So,
Okay. But you're not a
yeah,
licensed
I'm
therapist
not a clinical.
currently.
No, I'm not.
a clinical.
I'm not going to be either.
Yeah, me neither. So just to be clear, like when I say that, I'm saying
Right.
those of us who are not licensed by the state have a lot more freedom to share based on our own integrity and heart.
Yes.
So I don't mean that we're out of integrity. I mean that we don't have to follow rules that maybe aren't rules that we're not agreeing to. Because storytelling is the oldest way that like native elders teach, and it's the way. Storytelling is such a beautiful way to teach and to share. Um, I found that as in my own journey of moving from being trained in yogic lineage of my own past lives of being like being in leadership as like the leader in the room into many years, especially in the Bay Area, is so juicy for this kind of exploration, being in co-creative leadership, that going out of that age of the guru age into the Aquarian age, which we're constantly in, today's the Aquarian age, today's, we're always astrologically discovering that these times are the times of our collective awakening of a leveling of the playing field of the awareness and awakening of sovereignty that we always have had. That my own journey of like letting go of the one the who has it all together as a facilitator into I'm a normal woman with everyday needs that like everyone like everyone, um uh and the humbling of life, of the suffering of life, has helped me to be in that role as a coach and mentor of transparent vulnerability, that I don't need to prove myself to my clients by or myself that I have it all together and I know the way. But that vulnerability and storytelling actually is what absolutely creates the trust and the connection required for people to feel safe and open up. And it's been interesting, and I'm wondering if you've seen this in your own journey of how your relationships with the people that you serve have changed as you've changed, um,
Well,
over the
yeah.
last 4 decades. Yeah.
That's relationship changes, of course, in the last 4 decades. I want to go back, though. I really love what you
Okay, we'll put that
said
down.
about storytelling and healing in the collective. And what I've learned, particularly in this last decade, but even before that, just with a lot of the different kinds of personal development and spiritual workshops that I've been involved with, but um, I think enormous and accelerated. I've experienced this personally, especially been also with others I work with. Accelerated healing occurs when we're witnessed
Mm,
and when our story is heard and when our story is validated, when our story is shared, when another shares a similar story. We
yeah.
don't feel alone. We don't feel isolated in our journey and our path. And
Mm,
so I just want to really put a highlight on the value of collective healing.
mm,
And secondly, what was the other piece? Oh, that how my relationships have changed. Yes, in the last 4 decades, a couple different things. I'm no longer codependent. Uh,
mhm. Nice.
validation not needed. I know how to.
Amazing.
Yeah, I
I
know how
mean,
to
not amazing, but amazing.
amazing. I
Sorry, I
but
didn't
I
mean to
can
validate you.
yeah, I can help others with this as well, which is more important. Um, I have
Isn't
worked
it equally as important?
it's as important, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And uh, the victim wound, which came out of the early experiences, has probably been my greatest teacher. And transforming her has been I think that has been one of the deepest journeys or deepest parts of my path. And again, helping others recognize that that pattern, that wound. And it's tied in a lot with codependence.
Ooh.
Boundaries, healthy boundaries.
Mhm.
Uh, healthy boundaries, what I've again in relationships, is not cutting people out of your life or cutting people off necessarily or just saying you're too toxic, I can't deal with you. It's simply stating this is what I need, this what works for me, and this is what I offer in return. And finding out where the other person is and if they can meet you there then the relationship can continue, possibly with certain conditions. And I'm talking all kinds of relationships, professional, intimate. So I'm not one to believe, I don't believe when we talk about boundaries, I don't believe in cutting people out of your life unless there's, actual harm
Hmm.
um, that's existing. I'm a real strong advocate of let's go deep.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
let's really find what's underneath the tension, the conflict, the pointing fingers, the victimization. Just what is the need
Yes,
underneath all of
exactly.
that?
Yeah,
And
we're in the same conversation. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
so that's I'm really passionate about that, and that's how we
That's the work.
um, yeah, and that's how we resolve differences. We can't be
Absolutely.
running around with, singing in the same choir. We got to get out there and sing in other choirs.
Well, we need to
And
have different like the choir is like different parts. We have different harmonics, and when we come together, we create an orchestra.
yeah,
Or it could
yeah,
be that orchestra. You're talking about two different orchestras.
I'm talking about real diversity,
Mm.
and yeah, so like
Tell me
really
about
like
tell me about that. Real diversity.
what is diversity? Diversity is accepting, well, the real definition. Um,
Hmm.
Existing within an ecosystem
Hmm.
of different languages, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, really strong, um, belief systems, religions. That's diversity. Um,
Well,
so
you said real diversity, so I
yeah.
didn't know if you were comparing it to like fake diversity or but
Well, when I say I hear diversity used a lot.
okay.
And to me, diversity isn't the same choir. Diversity is, well, let's go see what that choir is doing. Diversity would be like two choirs. Like we got classical operatic choir music,
Hmm.
and we've got, hardcore street rap choir. And
Okay.
so let's find the commonalities in those two choirs. That would be a diversity experience and exploration.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that. There's a lot to talk about what you shared. Again, our body work is seems very similar, from self-compassion to not looking outside for validation to what happens when you transcend victim consciousness and you have the ability to repair relationships and develop great boundaries, which is like basically an embodiment, which is what my book that's coming out is about, embodied awakening
Oh wow.
integration.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to send you info. We're launching
Yeah,
the
I'm excited. Okay.
campaign in the next 2 weeks. Thank you. Um, so all of that and like what it means to become, I think what how I phrase it is like a high functioning adult, an emotionally intelligent, high functioning adult, or ultimately leader, because as you activate all of those levels that you spoke to, in my experience, then you start to get really clear on what you're consenting in and can start to like receive a lot more based on what it is that you're understanding that you need, start to fill your cup, start to like have needs met that weren't met, and then kind of if you're lucky you get glimpses of like overflow and like a great inspiration and light and lightness of being that helps you be in leadership in a way that really authentically inspires people. So I want to name that, and that is a journey, that is a journey that our lives are dedicated, my life is dedicated to, in this time. And the opposite of that is not even getting to the root of why you have so much conflict or grief or disease, which is basically unknowing who you are and that you're worthy. And so there's some core beliefs that I think if people work with you, they will discover, um, that, or work with me, that they will discover, um, what's not just what's been running the show that's like difficult and challenging, but also like the so funny. I remember working with one of my first mentors. I worked with her for like a decade or plus. I kind of strung it along. We strung it along longer than we should have. We were done when we were done, but she was very awake, and she had had a few near death experiences. Lonnie, her name's Lonnie Desmond. She's incredible. She's still alive. She's amazing. And but she would in the early years when I was really opening up, like in the thousands, and I was having like dreams and a lot of like Kundalini energy and stuff like that. And I'd go to have a session and she'd be like, "Oh, I know what's happening." And I'd be like, "Oh no." And I would get scared. Like I would have a fear barrier come up, and she would often just dispel that like good spiritual mentor. So she'd be like, "No, no, no. It's going to be much better than you think."
Yes. I love
and
it.
and right, and like that, and I've been able to like bring that forward with my mentees, and like that perception that like inner work doesn't be like, oh, come do inner work and therapy and boring and hell and so serious. Like, no, because I feel that like in between what you're saying and what you were saying before we even recorded this, like in getting to know you, like, no, like it's juicy, like it's to explore who you are, like there's just so much power and be and wonder, or at least those are my words, that's how I see it,
Yeah, I love it.
you know.
Um, I just wanna, yeah, again,
Yeah.
highlight a few of the things you said, particularly around emotional intelligence
Yeah.
and, self-awareness. I am published.
Yay.
Yeah, it's a mindset for leaders, and it's about emotional intelligence and resilience. That was the last publication, and it was, excuse me,
Mhm.
2003.
If you need to take a
Um,
minute, go for it. I could just talk.
no, I'm good.
Oh,
I'm
you're
good.
good. Okay.
But I just got invited, and it's so interesting. I'm doing what might seem very basic. Um, but I'm doing actually three different programs right now. But I got invited to the Google program, Search Inside Yourself Leadership Program, which
Yay.
started way back. Like it started, I was around during Wisdom 2.0 conferences when
Yep.
that was first launched.
Yes.
But it's now being offered only online,
Okay.
and the group I'm working with, there's so many of we're from all over the world, and there's the age range is 18 to, probably upper 60s, early 70s. This is, again, talking about the diversity. So we're starting with mindfulness practices, and a lot of it is applying it in our, interpersonal relations in the workplace. But I just wanted to
Mm,
highlight that search inside yourself and emotional intelligence, and how important that self awareness
mm-hmm.
piece is that you emphasized.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's really important, I think
Thank you.
we're probably going to go there, is shadow work,
Hmm.
and not being afraid. That's the work, to do the shadow work.
What's amazing is when you, because my work is so similar. The book is, it's an embodied awakening integration system, the awakening map. So,
I love
so
it.
it's so
Yeah.
similar. Yeah, and I want to talk to you about, do you remember the Enlightenment before Singularity movement?
I mean, enlightenment
Remember that
before
term? Okay.
singularity.
Okay.
I know
I'm trying to find some.
singularity. Yeah, I know
No,
the
there's a movement
university.
in the Bay that was called Enlightenment, like human enlightenment before singularity. And I'm trying to
Um,
find someone who could talk on it with me because it was a whole thing. But anyway, so yeah, it was blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so this embodied the shadow work, in my experience, going into the feeling body and the fear again, like it's like, oh no, I have to go and do this feeling. And then like awareness, presence, safety, and it just moves. And like it starts to lift. And like there's all these shifts. And now I'm not saying it's only one session for 5 minutes, but I'm saying like the medicine from those wounds, from presence, is short of miraculous. What happens as we heal if we're willing to do it? I
yeah.
think that that's an important piece for people to see
Yeah,
and get, because
if we
nobody,
have
inner work
right.
sounds so boring.
I think that's where we get back into the collective witnessing, or this, I like to call it sacred witnessing. And the
Mm,
shadow work, and the shadow work is, let's shine light on the parts that have been hiding for whatever
right,
reason, and let's treat them as a part that has been malnourished for decades, and maybe even lifetimes, incarnations.
right. And
There
I
can
mean,
be
maybe not
ancestral
even
work.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and there's, I've done some ancestral work as well, most recently with Thomas Hubel, which has been fantastic work
Sweet.
in the sacred witnessing, collective witnessing container. And,
Mm,
sharing our shadows in just in the most innocent way it's just phenomenal, the acceleration and integration that
in a safe
occurs.
in the collective field. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the woman? There's a really beautiful. I interviewed her many years ago for a telesummit before podcast era, and oh gosh, she did this. She's part of the integral community,
Oh, okay.
and in the Bay, and she did like a co-creative awakening. Like her whole thing is like we don't. I'm gonna remember her name and I'll share it.
Okay.
And I'll share it with you, and I'll share it in the notes. Patricia Albert,
Yeah,
Patricia
I don't know
Beer.
her.
You
Uh-uh.
don't know her? Oh
Mm-mm.
man, she's done really. I gotta see how she's doing. Reach out to her again. She's beautiful, beautiful elder. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it was all about like we awaken in presence together, like only.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And just doing a lot of partner co-creative, awakening work and presence work. And in the Bay Area, I'm now in Western North Carolina, but I spent 12 years in the Bay Area. And also then I was there in the 90s with the Grateful Dead, old days. But the consciousness in the Bay Area is so high and progressive, and you get out of that area, and I'm speaking to some of our listeners that could be anywhere around the world, that will be listening to this in the future. Like, if you don't have community that can witness you in everyday life, fortunately you have the internet. So
Yes,
these days you
absolutely.
can find virtual communities, whether it's working with us or someone like us. Um, and like bringing yourself into environments, and these days even like memberships are like not to expect, there it's available. That's really important, to be in a container that can hold you more than just like a single session with one person once in a while. There's
Ab-
something
yes.
yeah, my friends that I met in spiritual community are soulmates for life. And the people who have met themselves in my communities have become like closer than I could have even ever been with them as well. They're just the depth that happens in that connection from that authenticity is bonding. So we have,
Yeah.
so we can go in a couple of directions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So bringing it back to the wounds, I think one of the things that for me and the people that I've witnessed that really, 'cause I don't know, for some reason what's coming up today is like wanting to really open up a door and invite our listeners to like be enchanted or enticed or open and curious to lean in to do the kind of work that has great rewards but may feel scary and uncomfortable. Because when we talk about the wounded healer, we're acknowledging that we all have wounds based on unmet needs and trauma. And so to open that door is sometimes very uncomfortable. And I'd rather just keep my lifestyle of hanging out at the breweries with my friends on the weekends.
Uh-huh.
So I live in Asheville, breweries are in every corner. When
There, yes.
I go to a brewery once every like 6 months or something. So I'm not saying me, but I'm saying like that level of comfort versus being willing to lean in. I've heard a lot of spiritual people talk about, and this is a little off camera conversation, like this is something for us to look at in a different conversation, but how do we make spirituality sexy or invite people to do this work? And I think the pain gets so high that you make a choice. Like you're like, nothing's changing. I'm miserable in this relationship. I'm not making the money I want to make. My body hurts. I can't deal with my family. Like those kind of things like get so loud that you have to make it. Those are people that end up hiring me anyway. They're just like, I am ready to change. Give it to me. Take me on an experience. Can you speak to kind of what it takes for people to to really lean in if they're more so not familiar with communities of transformational work and leadership work, whether it's working in companies or working in individual or working in communities who maybe don't have it like I lived in Santa Cruz, I live in Asheville, like there's like healers in every corner. So, but most people are not drenched in conscious communities around the world necessarily of people doing their own inner work. That's actually a way smaller percentage of humanity that is doing that. So, can
Mhm.
you speak about kind of what it takes for people to be willing to create the kind of changes that actually make your life better
Yeah.
if you're willing to do some of that shadow work?
How do you take the first step? So
Hmm.
I'm gonna I want to just name
Yeah.
something though before we start on the first step, and that is conscious communities.
Hmm.
And I would just be very careful even using that word, conscious communities. And everybody,
Spiritual.
if the shadow is not being recognized in a conscious community, so-called conscious community, uh, then we've got some work to do.
Exactly.
And the community itself has some work to do. So some what I've noticed about so-called conscious communities or some conscious communities is that it adapts a
Yes.
tribal container
Yep.
versus an inclusive container.
So bad. It's
And
so common.
there's growth doesn't occur in that kind of a container. And what occurs instead is a lot of bypassing. So I just want to name that um,
Definitely. Thank you
before
for
we
saying that.
encourage people to join conscious communities.
Don't join
But
conscious communities.
no, I didn't say that. But how do we take the first step when the psychological or emotional, like physical too, but I think we're focusing more on inner landscapes today. How do we take the first
Mhm.
step to getting the support that we want, being heard, being seen, and finding others that we feel kin with, safe with.
Yeah.
So, recognizing that you're having challenges is obviously number one. And anything number next step is anything that's going to bring you back into your body. Um,
Oh, I
so
love
it can
that.
be simple. It can be simple like body work. It could be something like some basic yoga with pranayama, because this in itself is going to open things up for you to take the next step. The next step is, well, discernment being required, but finding the people or person or group that shares a resonance with um, your particular healing path or wound. Example, recovery groups. I'll just use 12-step groups. 12-step
Yep.
groups are fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everybody go to a 12-step group. I'm saying that particular model works, and it has helped hundreds of thousands of people. So people with addictions start in 12 steps. They may or may not stay with it. Doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
So finding groups that early groups that are working with your particular wound. It could be simple things like imposter syndrome, lack of confidence,
Mm,
ruminating thoughts. I mean, whatever, and tie that in this
mm.
wound, this acknowledgement, with something that you enjoy doing that involves the body. So that would be what I would say first couple steps in, and from there you kind of discover your people. Um,
That's really, really wonderful and interesting. I really, really like that. I belong to the YMCA in Asheville. It is bumping. I love the YMCA. And I have some things I want to share with you that I'm not going to share on camera right now
okay,
that I'm threading. Yeah,
yeah,
that I'm
yeah,
threading.
okay.
But generally, but I'll say it generally. In the Bay Area, there is so much progressive thought, and in the circles that I moved in, that it challenged me with so many gifts and medicines as a result of the ultimately those challenges brought out a lot of gifts. And one of them was going from like individual leadership to like collective leadership, like I shared. But another one was the ability to process a lot of issues through cultures socioeconomically. One of the communities I'm deeply involved with around the States is the West African drum and dance community as a dancer.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And living in Santa Cruz and in the Bay, we had like for decades of women and children that were interculturally married and with all of our issues and some of our teachers and good friends were coming from Congo, were coming from like war. I have a friend who saw his parents get killed in a war, um, and then they're coming to America and they're just like woo, and all these like younger people who aren't necessarily like familiar with African culture, just like, oh my God, this is so fun. You guys are like so awesome. But there's like no cultural understanding. So we've had like a lot of deep counsel and conversations of integration after George Floyd living out there. I mean, there was like a lot of stuff that came out that people needed to process. I decided I would never teach or anything ever again, but I'm about to start teaching again, actually, because we've worked through a lot. And then when I came back here, there were some communities that have been doing a lot of integration work, a lot of restoration work. But I found
Good.
that,
Yeah.
but there's a lot that wasn't being done too. And I found that at the Y, because it's so diverse there, and it's all inclusive, I've really found this really incredible community with my Zumba teachers that have become my good friends, my Latin teachers, people of all ages, the women in the sauna of like all our talks about all our stories is like I'm gonna write
That's
a blog
great.
after the book comes out. I'm gonna start a blog about it. And
Sauna
recently,
blog. I love that. Yeah.
a blog about the women's sauna, yeah, sauna talk. I'll probably call it.
I
That'll
love
be my
it.
if I ever do Substack, um, and um, and then and the fulfillment. And we also have a drum circle in Asheville every Friday where like 100 people go downtown and play
Yeah.
drums. And they could be like homeless, they could be any age, any culture, they could be tourists, they could be from anywhere. And tourists come flooding into this town every weekend, especially at this time of year. And what I found is like those communities where there's that diversity, I I've always kind of felt like are my people. And if I'm trying to be like the spiritual yogi, whatever, like that doesn't give me the fulfillment that I get from actually. And my grandma was a dancer. She danced, in Brooklyn when she was 16. She started a school. She went to powwows. A lot of this is ancestral for me. Like she was a very much made all my grandpa and grandma's outfits. They square danced in every state in the union, and so dancing and embodiment has always been like where I find, and the drums like always like pull me deep into
Always.
my
Yeah.
body. And recently I was like talking to one of my best friends about who lives in the Bay Area about it. And I'm like, when I dance with the drums with my people or Latin dance too, Zumba's like this too, I feel so free. I feel happy. I feel connected. And like practicing Spanish and talking to people of different ages and cultures, I was like, this is where, and it's because of what you're saying. It's like you're not saying, but it's the next thing I want to say is it's natural. Just like we learned about how the gut biome, we need diversity in the gut, not just monocropped rice and corn or wheat and corn in our bellies creates illness. Genetically modified monocropped food creates disease. We need that diversity. And I really love hearing you talk about that,
Hmm.
and naming that. And I'm wondering, yeah, if you could
I
speak
can say
more,
some more. It's really first
yeah, more about it.
microbiome. I'd love to do another podcast on microbiome, but
Yeah,
let's talk about my part of my healing journey early on.
yeah.
Once I had the spiritual awakening with the Romanticist English writers, I was very involved also in African dance and drum, starting in Chicago, and that's actually what brought me to San Francisco when I was very young. I've been in and out of San Francisco and in and out of the country several times, but that was it was a huge part of my healing journey was
Hmm.
being because you're really in your body
Yeah.
with the African dance and with the drumming and learning the drumming
And
then
the
and
focus
contact.
and the concentration. Yeah,
Yeah, and the
sorry.
contact improv also was a big part of that, of the early part of my journey. Just
Mm,
again, it was like I wasn't thinking about or even aware of in those days
right,
what integration was.
right.
It was or parts work or shadow work. At that time, it was just like, wow, let's just come back to the body, just getting back into this. body that I had really been out of for, a good part of my early years. So,
Can we can
yeah,
I just jump in on that because I want to name that like really really quick.
yeah.
So for our listeners, if you're not in the body, in my mind, what that looks like, and I want to hear what you think. I don't know what I want. Someone asks what I want. I don't have an opinion. I don't know. I don't even know what someone asks what I need. I don't know what I need. It's time to choose what's for dinner. I always yield to somebody else. How do I feel about things? Maybe I have a story about it, but there's no experience in the body of it. So can you give it
Mm.
just a couple of
That,
examples to people
that
who
that
don't,
that is a really, really good question. So how do
yeah,
we know when we're not in the
quote
body?
unquote, in the body? Yeah.
In the body. Definitely a very okay. No focus. Now, first of all, no focus.
Hmm.
Distraction upon distraction upon distraction. Anything to take away the pain that we're not even aware of. So I will
Checking
say
out
that
substance, drugs,
that
addiction,
that for sure. Yeah.
video games.
No target, no goal. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Wow. Lack of
Um,
responsibility of like that I create my reality.
Not
Everything my
even there's that's not even part of the awareness.
right.
So that's how we know, and
Thank you.
just not present.
Just not present.
You're not even aware of how you're not interacting, I think is a good way to frame that.
Thank you
So
for that. Okay, keep going.
yeah,
So there you
yeah,
are
just
in your
yeah,
past. So you weren't in your body. Dance got you in your body. Contact improv got you in your body in your early years.
African, yeah,
African, West African, African, Congolese. What style did you do?
Congolese, Senegalese,
Senegalese, Sabar, Haitian
and Haitian, yeah.
with a Blanche Brown. Did you do Blanche
She's
Brown? And the
she's still
stick.
around.
She's still around. Did you
Yep,
dance with Tito's?
yep,
Tito Sumpa.
yep.
Hey! That was my first teacher. Yeah, in Santa Cruz. And then Samba used to, my friend Samba used to drum. Samba and Go used to drum, who's now like a beloved friend, close friend. And yeah, I found like that being with people from around the world really, really helps. And what was really cool about the horror that we went through here with Hurricane Helene in Asheville a couple of years ago was all those lines went down, all of the like political, liberal, Republican, um, income
Yes.
levels, like all I have the chills, like that all just went down. It was like, how can we serve and support? And we created projects and like pockets. And who really showed up, I was appreciating this yesterday, who had it really together? The churches.
Oh,
The
interesting.
churches, the
Yep,
churches really
yep.
had it together. They had money flooding in, they had resources. But some churches, like the Billy Graham one, was a little. They were like, you have to be Christian if you're gonna like volunteer her, and that was a little much. But you didn't see that mostly in other places. Yeah. So we've been covering a bunch of stuff. We started
Yeah,
talking about yeah, we and
the
this
wounded healer.
yeah, we've been
Yeah.
talking about the wounded healer, and we started out you started out sharing about how how wounds become the path, and it reminded me of when I used to do massage. And I think another example is like, I fell in love in 2017 with my twin flame, twin, whatever, what were we? Twin Ray. And he passed away,
Hmm.
and we became spiritually, we continue our relationship interdimensionally. Um, but that humbled me like nothing that I ever went through in my life. And the storm was like, and then my dad passing in the storm was the next. But I think people can relate, those of you who are listening who have lost somebody that you love. It really does something. It kind of it grows you. It brings you
Exactly.
like a certain, or like what I went through is like holding space for my dad when he transitioned and my whole family, and like staying grounded in prayer while he was leaving his this world. That gave me a medicine and also a great compassion for others in their suffering that I don't think I had as a younger healer, intuitive. Um, and there's a lot of work I want to name for people like us who have been doing it a while. Anytime we're triggered by other people who are also doing the work, if we find ourselves competing or we find ourselves comparing, a lot of women and men I know, I mean, 50s, 60s, and older, 70s. I know people in their 80s, they're constantly wishing to be younger, like wishing to be at a different era, longing for a different era. I'm sure you hear this like, oh, if I want to go back to where my body before I was had a baby, or I want to go back to, this time. It's like that's not happening. So, that might be keeping you from being present. So, yeah,
The one thing I want to mention, you started it, and I think I definitely wanted to bring this into our conversation
yeah.
today, and as it relates to the path of the wounded healer, and
Hmm.
is extremely important, is relationship with grief. And you started that when you started talking about losing your parent,
Partner. Hmm.
partner, and
Hmm.
parent.
Hmm.
So it's really important for all of us
Mm.
to have facilitation in group or individually. I again find both uh, beneficial, so that
Hmm.
number one, we have to recognize the grief. And once we're in our body and we start to dislodge things that are really stuck, grief appears. Grief, it could
Mm.
be old grief, things from things we never had, to many losses, many losses. Um, my case for sure.
Mm.
But I learned how to, and this was really deep work and beautiful work, and I want to encourage people
Mm.
to not hide grief. Don't hide your tears, but grief can be one of the most benevolent lovers
Mm.
that you will ever have in
Mm.
your life. And when we learn to love our grief and to give grief a place in our being,
Yeah.
not define us, but it's part of our being, that
Hmm.
there will be such a lightness and such a healing. And I think most wounded healers that are doing
Hmm.
the work and in their work of service have had this profound awakening
Initiation. Yeah.
with grief, with grief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Yeah. Thank you for that. In Chinese medicine, the grief um
Lungs.
is lungs, and
Yeah.
yes, but it's also the metal type that carries grief. It's the metal
Mm,
element,
mm,
and the metal is like the conduit. So a lot of healers, people who identify as healers, are conduits for life force energy. They move a lot of energy through the body and work through the body, and that's why a lot of most healing practitioners are empaths, intuitive empaths, right? And I love that you said in the beginning that just because you didn't get your needs met and you're on the path of healing doesn't mean that you're a wounded healer, or in that,
definitely not. It's not
and that it,
everybody's archetype. Yeah.
right, and that
Yeah.
it becomes a choice to walk into that, as I'm going to add, as you're aware that you have that choice,
Hmm.
and many years ago, there's two really incredible stories about grief. One is I realized I heard in prayer that grief was my strongest feeling in my
Mm,
body, like my strongest negative emotion that I would feel,
mm,
that's available to me in this life, and then finding out that's related to like the metal type totally makes sense,
mm,
right? As well. So I really get what you're saying, to befriend grief and honor grief and give it a space, and
hmm,
not try to hide, because if we try to hide it, what happens? Anger blankets grief. Um, right. And I know that I need to cry or move grief when I'm just mad at everyone, because
mm,
usually there's something else going on when I find that I'm mad at everyone, especially in my
mm,
50s with my hormones. It's very common.
mm,
I'm mad at people a lot.
mm,
Um, right. And and of course in Chinese medicine, grief is like the lungs, the remedy is letting go, which is exactly what you're saying. You're like, be with
mm,
it, acknowledge it, give it space. Don't try to blanket it, ignore it, or disassociate from it.
hmm.
You know,
I,
that's
I
really beautiful.
Yeah, I'm so glad we had this conversation on wounded healer. And there was another piece.
Yeah.
I'm also a metaphysician, and
Hmm.
I use tarot oftentimes. Sometimes I'll open up a 3 month relationship or 6 month program. My intake is oftentimes I use the tarot rather than, a 6 page assessment, um,
Nice.
quantitative assessment, although I can use those as well.
Oh, I
Uh,
can't
but
wait to
the,
share my new cards that are coming out in
but
this summer with you.
I,
Hmm.
I just wanted for those that are attuned
Hmm.
to metaphysics and like metaphysics. Looking at where Chiron is in your astrological chart
Exactly.
also indicates path of wounded healer,
I know.
and also the cards, the hermit, the star, the high priestess. If these
Mm,
cards come up a lot for you, you're in
mm,
you're on the wounded healer path. Whether she's your archetype or not is
hmm.
another conversation, but you're on that
Yeah.
path. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I can keep going a couple of minutes here over. I know we're a little
Okay,
bit
great.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The wounded healer. Gosh. I mean, if you're a healer, you're a wounded healer, I think. I don't think unless you're Kuan Yin and you're like completely enlightened and you know what I mean? And you come back to just serve and you're not even like a human entity anymore, which that's a whole nother conversation. But I've found that my integration journey has taken so much has involved I don't want to say the word taken, but to absorbed like many like you lineages of teachings because so much has been available in the last like several decades, 4 decades in the West to have us have access to all these kinds of lineages and teachings and that like my apprentice we're planning a membership for this fall, a new membership based on the awakening, the book and the cards and the body of teaching and everything. And her name's Taylor. She was on a podcast. If you guys want to check out Taylor, check her out. I interviewed her on YouTube like in February. Brilliant. She's 20 in her late 20s, very, very brilliant. She goes, the thing that I want people to know is that you are the metaphysical thing. Like you are like the crystal. Like you have all of the power to heal, to manifest. Like it's you. And so that's what I found in my integration is, I have my like guru on my altar, I have Kuan Yin, I got my crystals here and there, but like mostly it's this vessel
Yeah.
that has the guidance and the tools. If you know where to look and how to anchor to discover, like with the things that you've done, the mindfulness practices, the embodiment practices, that
Yeah.
we are that too. So and like crystals are great, cards are great. I love it all, but it's not even required as you start to
Well,
awaken.
I
Yeah.
wanted, yeah, that's the guru within. You are the guru within, the Buddha within. I think is what you're saying. At least that's been my
Yeah.
guiding star. And I just, again, for your listeners, I also, as it relates to wounded healer and the path and finding community, be that virtual, online, which there's many, 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 but also just ritual. Others that
Mm,
are doing ritual and ceremony, I don't necessarily mean whenever we hear the word ceremony these days, it seems like we're talking
ayahuasca.
about, yeah, we're talking plant medicine. That's not what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
And that's cool too, if that's
Yeah.
where you're going.
Right.
But I mean ceremony and ritual as part of your daily life and with others who are also um, incorporate ceremony and ritual into
Mhm.
their daily life. So that is another way to um, find community, women's groups particularly, and men's groups,
Mm,
but even different rituals around the moon. I mean, there's all kinds of
all
ways
kinds of
to
ways.
find community that serves as sacred witness and part of your healing path.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It opened up a lot of doors, and
Yeah.
we have like a lot of like tentacles out there for questions or for ongoing conversations and insights to be had. Anything else you want to share before we close out that you want our peeps to know?
Yeah, just where to find me.
Mhm.
My Igniting the Spark is my primary business, and I have several different websites. So just Google me because I have one that's particularly for healing, and another website that's more for leadership and working with leaders of organizations. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so just Google me, you'll find me. My healing, coaching, and readings are all on one site, and
Amazing.
I really enjoy just
Mm.
riffing with you.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah,
There's so much to talk about. That's why I started a podcast because
exactly.
I could
Yeah,
just
it's
keep
great.
going and going. And I understand how some of these like bro podcasters now do like 3 hours. Like they just go live for like hours and hours and
Yeah,
hours. And that's what we do on retreats. Retreats are really fun and concentrated sessions are really fun. Thank you so much. Thank you for this
yeah.
time.
All
Okay.
right. Many
Mhm.
blessings to you, and we'll cross paths live soon, I hope.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Over.